In this video I'm looking at the evolution of the Citroen 2CV. We're here at Peak 2CV with Jono. Hi Jono. Who's going to help us with the finer details of the history of the 2CV. So better start with the oldest one. I don't mean Jono.
Thank you, Ian.
So already we're jumping a bit down the evolution of the 2CV because this one's from 1957. So what marks this out as early in 2CV circles, Mr. Jono?
Well, the most obvious thing, of course, is the ripple bonnet, which was fitted until 1960-ish, 60, 61. I can never exactly remember myself from the, when they went to the later.
Yeah, this isn't standard. This one is in specifically for paintwork.
Yes, it is. The suicide doors, which again were swapped by conventionally hinging, or swapped for conventionally hinging ones in the about 1964, 65. The four-light coachwork, which did last through again also until the 60s. Most significantly of this one, I suppose, for the 50s, is that it's still got the roll-down boot lid rather than the metal boot lid, which came in actually in 1957. So this is one of the very last with this kind of arrangement. And interestingly, and I know you've had this fact written in a book, Ian, haven't you?
Yes.
By Mr. Richard Porter.
Yes, Sniff Petrol, volume 1 it was of his boring car facts. It relates to these little tags which are used to secure this canvas boot lid, but every 2CV built until the end of production in 1990 had those tabs. So we're not sure why, because as Jono said, they stopped fitting the canvas boot lid in 1957.
I think maybe they hung the body shells up from in the factory, or certainly in the French factory. But,
that makes sense.
I'm not certain about that.
Because there's similar tabs here for the externally opening roof. These little securing tabs here, which I'm not going to pull it because it's not my car. But again, every 2CV has those, even though by the 1980s, was it the 1980s, they all went to an internal roof?
I think for some markets they might still have the external ones.
Wow.
British market, we went to internal by about 84-ish.
But all the other 2CV hallmarks are here. We've got separate headlamps. These are aftermarket indicators. You can adjust the height of the headlamps because the suspension is so soft. But
the height, the angle.
Yeah. Well, yes, the height of the pattern.
Yeah. And
windscreen wipers are also quite interesting because these are powered by the speedometer, which is why the speedometer has an extra handle on it, so you can disengage the drive and operate the wipers by hand, like so. Never seems to work quite as well as you'd hope, but that's how you'd power the wipers if you're stuck in a traffic jam and the speedometer is not going round. Otherwise they're driven by the speedometer cable. Earlier 2CVs also have larger wheels, 16-inch here compared to the 15-inch of later ones, and while that one over there has lovely dainty little hubcaps, not an option here because there is no centre hole in the wheel. But Jono is desperate to show us the engine, so let's lift the bonnet. This is another difference with this ripple bonnet. The sides of the bonnet come up with the bonnet, so you don't have to remove them separately, and then you've just got 4 nuts holding each front wing in place, so very simple to take apart. But mostly what's in here is not very much. So this is a
425cc, 12 brake horsepower. This one.
Oof.
It's called the 3-stud manifold. Hence, there's only 3 studs per side on the manifold.
Ah, yes. And there's your heater, taken directly from the cylinders. Later 2CVs would have a heat exchanger taking heat also from the exhaust. But little 4-speed gearbox. Here's the lever which goes through to the dashboard change, just like a later 2CV. And inboard drum brakes on these earlier cars. Another key difference, if it's visible, just pull that hose out of the way, is basic constant velocity joints. So they're not constant velocity joints or CV joints. So you have to be a bit careful when you're driving them around tighter bends. There we go. Here's some 12 horsepower engines fired into life. Surprisingly smooth because it's a boxer twin. Little fan going round, there's no fan belt, nothing to go wrong. The dynamo is behind the fan. beautiful. In fact, you can operate the starter motor under the bonnet, because it's just this wire which goes to a button you pull on the dashboard. It just pulls that lever and starts the engine. Oh, look at that, purring like a kitten. So now we're going to jump to 1964 with this rather lovely 2CV. What can you tell me about this one, Mr. Jono?
The first thing I can tell you is it's actually for sale on behalf of a customer, so if anybody's interested, there's the advertising spiel. It's the Azam, which was the top of the range model at the time.
Oh right, so hence the bling.
Hence the bling.
Overriders, lots of chrome.
Actually, that one there, the 1957, was the top of the model, top of the range at that point, called the AZL, L for Lux.
So what did you get on a Lux?
As far as I can tell, you got some bits of chrome.
Oh right, that was it. So this bright work on the doors.
I think the seats are plush material and so on.
Oh yes, we haven't really looked at the seats. Do pop a door open, we'll have a proper nose indoors.
You've gone out of sync now, haven't you?
I've gone out of sync.
Yeah, there you go. Basic.
Simple seats, and you just tip them up and you can pull them out.
Indeed.
Ideal for picnics. But yeah, very, very basic in here. Very, very minimalist. You get an ammeter, the speedometer, and a few controls, and that's about it.
Sorry about that.
It's a cracking door. Right, jumping on to this 1964. So this is an Azam. This is super plush. We've got the chrome bumper hoops. We've got bright work on the sides. A plusher interior. That looks very posh in there. Almost Ami-esque.
These ones are very, very plush and very,
wow.
Well, comparatively, shall we say.
Yeah, how does the interior compare? Let's take a nose in. Oh look, we've got speedometer and fuel gauge are now together on the dashboard. A couple more switches. The retrofitted indicator stalk there. The wipers are now electric, so they will work even when you're stationary in traffic. But it's still fairly simple, really. How similar is it under the bonnet? Oh, this is great. I should get an assistant to help me more often. Oh, well, that all looks pretty similar to me.
This is the slightly larger, well, it's the same CC, it's 425cc as well, but this is the 18 horse version.
Ah.
4 stud, as they say, there's a bigger gap there.
Oh, yes.
Well, rather, there is a gap. So this is actually quite a bit more usable. That extra 6 horsepower makes quite a difference on the road.
Yeah, that doesn't sound a lot on paper.
But when it's such a small amount of power anyway, it does make a difference. Both of these cars have got the centrifugal clutch, or the traffic clutch as it was called.
Oh yeah, I can see that just on the back of the clutch down there. So that means you can do gearless pullaways, or clutchless pullaways rather, because it'll do it all for you as the engine speeds up, clutch engages. Downside being you can't bump start it, so that's not quite so good. Very similar to the clutch on my Invacar, that's also centrifugal. And I've just noticed we've also got demisting to the windscreen. Is that a change from that one?
Yeah, I think.
Oh no, it's just a different way round. Look, it goes the other way round the battery. So it's getting a bit more like the later 2CVs. But otherwise very similar. We've still got the external opening roof. There's still no side window, but that did come in during the 1960s, I think.
Just after this one, yeah. But this has got the latest style bonnet, which lasted right the way through until 1990.
Yeah, the fluted bonnet with the separate panels on the side that you have to remember and drop the bolts and the clips and everything. Or I do anyway. But yeah, luxury of luxuries, a steel boot lid. So, you know, things are really moving on. We're now jumping all the way to 1970, where we can see such exciting things as actual indicators from the factory. The history of this one's quite interesting though, isn't it? So tell us about the history of this car.
This particular car, well, the writing and the logo on the side there, basically it's the Belgian midwife service.
Ah.
And they used them, as far as I'm aware, certainly from the 70s, possibly earlier, right the way through to the 80s. They always had 2CVs, always blue, and with that logo on the side. So this car was owned by them originally. It was imported into Britain in 1979, which is why it's got a T plate.
Oh yes, that's how they did things at the time. So the T refers to the year of import in this case.
It's then spent some time in France, in the Charente, with its current owner. Now it actually lives in Scotland.
Ah, well travelled then.
Well travelled, yeah.
And what's significant about these indicators?
They're not round.
They're not round. They are sort of oblong. It's like they stole them from another car, or maybe a truck or something.
This is a very early example of that kind of later car. The rear number plate panel's completely different as well.
Oh, let's go and take a
But
look.
it carried on with these indicators for a very short period of time, so it's very rare that it had them before they went to the round indicators.
Oh yes, and now we've got the rear lamps that look like the later 2CVs. Like that one over there, in fact.
Originally fitted to ME6s.
Indeed. And again, we've got some luxury going on with little hoopy bumperettes. But if we take a look inside, things are getting a whole lot more serious now. Look, we've got a large speedometer. The numbers like to fall off or disappear over time. A huge array of buttons, some of which do things. I'm guessing one's a wiper switch and the other one starter? The red button?
The red button is the starter,
yeah. Ignition is down here on this one.
It should be in the normal place, but it's...
Yeah, things do change a bit over time, but yeah, we've also got the extra rear window now at the back. Oh, that shuts very nicely.
And doors which shut, conventionally opening and closing doors. But still with the slam shut locks.
Oh yeah.
Around here.
Oh yes, very simple.
So that's all you get. It just, goes into this little notch here. It's changed to burst proof locks in 1973.
Would it have had those seat belts from new, or have they been added later?
I think they possibly would have done. That one there, the 1972 one, has got the same belts.
Okay.
Or very similar belts anyway.
Yes, fundamentally a similar car, but let's look at one of the biggest differences under the bonnet. Wow, so yeah, that's looking quite a bit like the later engines, but this one's 435cc. What were they, about 20 brake horsepower by now?
Yeah, yes, something like that. I've forgotten how much they are now, Ian, I'm sorry.
22 somewhere around there, whereas the 602s were more like 29 brake horsepower. Feel the power. But yeah, proper heat exchangers now, so the exhaust pipe is running through as well as taking heat from the engine. But conventional clutch.
Conventional clutch on this one, yeah.
And the same 4-speed gearbox as before, still with inboard drums, but now look, they're finned because the performance is so legendary that the brakes could possibly overheat. Of course, there are suspension changes as well. We look underneath, it's always fun to look on the floor. We've got the suspension can, front and rear, but telescopic dampers at the back, whereas the earlier cars just have a friction damper where the suspension arm's mounted to the car and you just tighten it to try and resist the movement.
Well, this is even more interesting, this one, Ian, because it's got batters front and rear.
Oh, batters. Can we look at a batter? Let's jump around the other side. So the batter is this here, which is basically a heavy weight inside a cylinder full of oil, which sort of damps the up and down movement. And yeah, the batters just transform the car. They remove any semblance of patter as you're going down the road. But we shall jump further into the 70s. In fact, I think we're only jumping a year or two further forward to look at a 1972. So here we are in 1972, just 2 years later, and now we've got the proper round indicators that you'd come to expect. I presume we've got different doors as well, different latches.
No, this is a very late slam shot.
Oh well, so we've got the modern, I say modern, the more modern handle design, but we're still on slam locks.
They changed in 73, so this
Gorgeous.
is very late.
Black vinyl, and yeah, that looks a little more factory, I think, as an upper mount. But yeah, again, the lines go all wiggly with age on these Speedos, which I think is quite delicious.
It's another engine.
Hey, so are we up to the full fat 602 now?
This is full fat 602.
Oh, alternator as well.
Essentially exactly the same as they used right up until 1990, or more or less.
Albeit that carburettor looks absolutely dinky. So it's still a single choke Solex at this point. They later changed, I think about 8081 to a twin choke.
About 78.
Okay.
77, 78.
And it didn't deliver any more power, but it sounds like it's got more power. I think the twin choke ones, they have a lovely growl to them.
They are nice.
And I think the point is that it's more efficient when you're on the single choke. So we've got the brake master cylinder over here as well, because we're still on those finned drum brakes. Before we get to the 1980s, we need to take in the very square era of the 1970s and the square headlamp 2CVs. Now, fitting these larger headlamps involved extending the headlamp bar, and that was carried over to all later 2CVs. So on this one, the headlamps sit further away from the bonnet than they do on these early cars. Good anorak points right there. No, if we want to be really anorak, we would have to point out that the grille is wrong. It's the same grille I have fitted to my 2CV, and that is the Azam grille, is it?
No, it's just a general 2CV grille from when they switched to this bonnet in the early 60s. That's the grille they came with until they went to the 3-bar grille that is on the 70s cars outside and the 19...
Yeah, I love this grille. I think it's the best grille fitted. I think it would have had an evolution of this plastic grille originally, and it would have had overriders like that as well. But like I say, 2CVs tend to evolve all on their own over the years. Well, probably with the assistance of their owners, to be fair. I don't think they just changed themselves.
Random colour roofs, for example.
Yes, a bamboo would not have that colour roof, but this one does, and it's quite nice. It brightens it up.
It is. It makes it look like a Tic Tac.
Yeah, similarly, this is one of Matt's canvas hoods by the look of it. And I'm not sure that's the colour they offered from the factory.
Certainly not the colour this colour.
No. So everyone tends to put their own print on their cars, and so they do evolve gently, which is why it's sometimes nice to see one that's entirely standard. And now we're jumping to the final evolution. This is a 1982, is it?
Yes.
Jade green 2CV. And if we have a look under the bonnet of this one, it's got the Adventure Kit front bumper on it. Did you just break my car?
Well, look, you broke my car earlier, so you know it seems to be a
payback
seems only
time.
fair, doesn't it?
Yeah. But moving swiftly on, the power plant in this example. But yeah, the Adventure Kit is part of. You could get a kit from the dealers, I think it was, wasn't it? You'd have cut down rear wings, extra handles on the back, and this different front bumper arrangement. But here we are up to the full-blown 602, the twin choke Solex. So it looks much larger, but that's because it's got twin chokes going on. And pretty much the final evolution. We've now got inboard disc brakes buried all the way down here. So really good stopping power. Still no servo. This one's a right-hand drive. You can see the master cylinder over there. Green because it uses the same LHM fluid on these disc brake 2CVs as the hydraulic fluid in most hydro pneumatic Citroens. But if we head around the back, I have to show you one detail. As discussed, if we open the boot, we've still got those catches for the canvas boot lid that by the time this one had been built hadn't been used for, I don't know, 15 years or something?
No, not 15 years.
My maths is
My
terrible.
maths isn't very good. 20 odd years.
Okay, 20 odd years.
Late 50s to the early 80s.
Yeah, there you go. Don't, never trust my maths. But again, we've got the adventure bumper like I have on my own 2CV there at the back, and these later rear lights. It wasn't long after this one was built that these changed to black, I don't think.
The surrounds he's talking about there, not the lights.
Yeah, the surrounds.
Be able to see out the lights if they were black.
That's very true. Don't go boy racer and paint your lights black. So we've got an aftermarket steering wheel. It's not entirely factory in here, but this is what we call the twiddly knob dash. So we've got a wiper switch which operates both ways. Both ways are the same speed, and there's a hazard warning light switch which also operates both ways for reasons we don't fully understand. That's your screen wash, and that light, when you put the ignition on, that makes that light come on. That's the brake fluid. So if that comes on without you pressing that, you know you've got no brake fluid. It looks like you've actually got an indicator warning light on this and main beam, is it?
No, it's nothing. It's taped over. There was just nothing there.
Oh, okay. It's just a blanking plug.
It's just a blanking thing, I think.
And then we've got a fog light switch, which is another twiddly knob.
Actually is not normally that. That's normally a pull switch.
I was going to say that looks like a hazard light switch, but it works, and that's what 2CVs are about, really. If it works, it's grand. Can we hear this one start up? Have you got the key?
By the way, you said this is an aftermarket, but it's not aftermarket. It's a 1960s 2CV Azam wheel, like is in the 1964 one in there.
It looks very nice, because normally if this is a special, it'd just be a black steering wheel of a slightly more dull type. So let's see how different this sounds to the early 2CV.
Probably not any.
As he starts it in gear, You can hear a bit of alternator belt noise. That's a different we got going on, but otherwise it sounds very similar. But the twin chokes means you do get more of a grr as you drive down the road, and of course much more power. 29 brake horsepower, 29 pound-foot of torque as well. Maximum power produced at 5,750 RPM. That sounds lovely. This is just the happy sound of 2CVs. It's one of the best automotive noises there is. Now we're going to have a brief aside to discuss vans. We've only discussed the 2CV saloons so far, so let's have a nose around these. On the left here we have a small van. This is a AZU 250. The first vans came out still with ripple bonnet in 1951, so they were very ripply all over. Sadly we don't have one here. They're very rare in the UK. Pretty rare, full stop. But built on the standard 2CV chassis, but with the rear legs truncated, because frankly how much could you carry with the little engines they had on offer. Gorgeous patination going on, but yeah, these were your indicators, so a lot of people fit extra ones. This one has some extras on the front, but yeah, very cute, very characterful, not all that practical, but by the 1970s we'd grown to the AKS 400, which has a much larger rear body and is built on a more standard 2CV chassis, so it's a bit longer at the back as well.
It's actually quite different from the standard chassis, in fact. But,
oh, is it? Oh, feel free to correct me, I am not the expert.
But it is a different chassis.
Okay, what are the key differences?
Ask Ken Hanna.
Oh, we should. Ken Hanna knows everything. We love Ken.
No, there's extra reinforcements and extra mounting points for the body shell.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Different mounting points and so on.
But it is the same length as the saloons, I think.
Yeah, it's the same length as a saloon.
Yeah, super. And what engine power plant have we got in these later ones?
This is exactly the same 602cc engine as in the later 2CV6s. On this one with a single choke carburetor.
Mm-hmm.
Bit bigger.
So it's a 1972?
72, 71, 72, yeah.
So that's pretty early for this style.
Yes.
Yeah, because in between these two there was a van known as the AK350, which has the same height rear van area as the smaller van, but the same length as the 400. So slightly better aerodynamics, because these things are a bit, yeah, blunt is the word I would use. But let's just look at the vans. The AKS 400 was replaced by the Diane based Acadian, which is a clever play on that AK naming formula, and Diane. We'll have a look at Dianes and Amis and all the others, Maharis, etc. another day, perhaps when they actually have a 2CV meet again. We long for those days. But there we go, that was just a bit of evolution of the 2CV here at Peak 2CV, where he happens to have many different types in, all having different amounts of work. This one's your vehicle.
That one is my own, and the jade green one over there is mine as well. Now.
Just ignore this huge monstrosity that someone's parked here. So yeah, that's our evolution of early 2CV to late. Quite a lot of changes, and we haven't gone into Anoraki detail. There is it evolved a bit.
I couldn't even remember half of it, Ian.
No, I'm much the same. Yeah, they evolved quite a lot. It's like the Volkswagen Beetle. By the end, the Volkswagen Beetle wasn't really like the first of the Beetles. The 2CV was much the same, and I hope you've enjoyed our explanation thereof. So I shall say thank you very much for watching. Head to the Hubnut store if you wish and buy fine merchandise, including 2CV merchandise, and we shall see you in a future video. Farewell. Where did these headlights come from?
Where did they come from? I don't know, a factory.